Well, Tyler, they always say Pitbull's Mr. Worldwide, but I think you're giving him a run for your money, or you're giving him a run for his money, I might say.
Mm. Danny, this was a big month for England. They crowned their new king. Arsenal bottled it,
Oh,
and they survived a little trip from yours truly.
wait, were you the king they coronated? I wasn't paying too much attention.
I tried to make that happen. Turns out some of the things we have said on this podcast have reached other shores.
The House of Windsor are fans of We Demand a Podcast, or maybe they're not fans, but they're certainly devoted listeners.
Yeah, they are not fans. Let me tell you. Let's just say I got a grand tour of the Tower of London. Those those torture devices, they work a little too well. It actually kind of turned me on a little bit, and at that point they didn't really know what to do. So they just kind of like sent me back. They were like, "All right, well this guy actually seems to be enjoying it."
You were scaring the hose, the torture meister hose.
Yeah. I mean, listen, when you get the the buff bear daddy to, put on like the hood and be
Right.
whipping me,
I mean, come on.
come on. What am I supposed to do? Like
Whomst among us,
like not ask for more? I just I don't understand.
They fucking put they put you in the thing that stretches you out, and you go, "Oh, daddy," and they're like, "Ah, fuck."
Like just stop. So here, when you talk to people who go to London, they might say, I loved seeing the Tower Bridge. Oh, Big Ben was so cool. Throw all of that in the trash because none of that shit matters. Here, these were the top 3 highlights of London. Number 1, of course, it's Paddington Station. Like, how could it not be? I feel like everything else in England doesn't matter. Just go to Paddington Station and you can sit at the bench where they found Paddington. And, you might as well just go home.
The greatest moment in British history.
Yeah. Maybe world history, honestly. Like, love Paddington. It's gonna hurt like a bitch when I gotta pull the trigger on his Tory ass, but,
He definitely was a quiet Liz Truss supporter,
Yeah. He was like, well, I don't really think she's done much wrong. Just give her a chance. Second highlight is across the river. There's a place called Shrek's Experience. Didn't get to go in there because it was closed. It closes at 3:30, which I don't know. I mean, Shrek's a hard worker. He needs his pound time.
No, I was gonna say no. I was gonna say his fucking Shrek can only get hard so many times in a day.
That's true. That's true. And then the third top moment was I go into a bathroom, in this pub, and there's these 2 British blokes in there, and the one guy says to the other, he's like, "Oh, heaven, in it," as they're just peeing here in the urinals, and they're just like, "Oh." As they're, I'm like, what is going on in this country? I don't know.
Sounds kind of similar to the Tower of London to me.
A little. Not as many water sports over in the Tower of London. Unfortunately.
That's disappointing.
Yeah, that showed up on the TripAdvisor review.
Well, and by the TripAdvisor review, you mean your TripAdvisor review?
Yeah, it's several actually. I wasn't the only one thinking that. And that moment had me thinking a lot about American bathroom etiquette. I personally don't like when, I've been in a bathroom before, just doing my business, taking a big old dump, and someone's on the phone. I'm like, what? It's just, why are you talking in the bathroom? I don't know. I don't like it.
I've definitely talked on the phone while taking a piss, but I feel like talking on the phone and taking a shit is a violation of the Geneva Convention.
Yeah, and
it violates levels of consent that I think that in the Me Too era we're trying to establish more firmly,
Yeah, I also wouldn't. I don't know if these 2 British guys knew each other. I didn't have enough info. But I know I wouldn't be talking to someone else at the urinal next to me. I just wouldn't do that.
I mean, I do that.
Unless he's got a massive hog.
And then be like, hey, nice,
hey,
nice knob over there.
Well, what you got there? That nice Big Ben, Let me hear those bells ring. But Yeah, I survived. Don't think I'll be going back because I'm not sure I can legally go back.
Hmm.
I can't really talk about it much. Uh,
The State Department
let's.
is now also listening to the podcast.
Yeah, we got a lot of viewers and not for the best reasons. So, what can you do?
Welcome to We Demand a Podcast. I'm Danny.
I'm Tyler.
We're two old friends with two very different tastes in music, so once a month we like to get together and have a bit of an intellectual dick measuring contest about who's the biggest hipster.
Yeah, this is a very phallic themed episode so far. I hope you're. I mean, from the get go.
I mean, par for the course, honestly.
Yeah, we have a quota to meet. We got to keep the sponsors happy after all.
Manscaped is not going to pay us the $50 unless we mention dicks like at least 30 times an episode.
Yeah, it's in fact this past we were gonna record last week, but I was actually in the hospital because of blood loss because I wasn't using Manscaped and I nicked myself and it was bad. It was wasn't looking too good.
Well, I'm glad you made a full recovery. My personal dream sponsor for the pod is those like Samurai X Tiger gas station dick pills.
Oh yeah, baby.
I think
I
that's a
feel
real
like
untapped market for
we got a
podcast
shot.
listeners. I'll reach out.
We got a shot at those. One last note on that. I'll never forget in 2009 took this fine arts trip department down to Disney World and we stopped at this big trucker stop and everyone's getting their convenient snacks and everything and there was just a jar of pills called Truckers Love It.
Hell yeah.
Love spelled Luv.
That's just meth, baby.
Hell yeah. Speaking of meth, have you ever heard of a city called Chicago?
No. Never heard
Well,
of her.
It's
Chicago, I barely know
I
those.
barely a,
I barely know the hoe.
No,
How's
I,
that?
I barely know the hoe. Damn. Well, for this month, I gave Danny the 1999 album Summerteeth by Chicago's finest Wilco.
The way things go, you get so low, struggle to find your skin. Oh, hey ho, look out below, your prayers will never be answered again.
So yeah, released in 1999. This was Wilco's third album, and I would definitely consider it their breakthrough in terms of styles. So, just before we really get into talking about it, just want to give a bit of background on Wilco as a band because they do have a little bit of an interesting history. So, previously, Jeff Tweedy, the main singer and lead songwriter, Jeff Tweedy and most of the members were in another band called Uncle Tupelo. And Wilco formed after Jay Farrar left the band. And Uncle Tupelo were an alternative country band who were active in the early 90s. They never really had a lot of commercial success, but they did sort of influence that genre a lot. Farrar went on to form Sunvolt, who, like, their first two records, really good, and then after that, they kind of, like, taper off. Whereas Wilco's, like, the exact opposite. Like, their first two records, like, oh, yeah, it's pretty good. And then it's Summerteeth where they really kind of find their footing, but uh, Wilco have definitely had the more successful career in part due to Tweedy's songwriting and how they've always continued to expand their musical styles. Every album is a little bit different. There's always something else that they're trying new. And I thought this was appropriate because, like Yola Tango last month, Wilco are an indie staple. they're continuing to make great music this late into their careers. They've been around for so long. Um, and we can't talk about my music taste without covering Wilco at some point. So, just wanted to ask, Danny, what did you think?
So I would say this record grew on me with each listen. My final listen today was probably my favorite, top to bottom of it.
Hmm.
My biggest. This is gonna sound so like peanut brained, like talking to your dad, but it really reminded me of the Eagles a lot at certain moments, like that sort of brand of kind of country influence, like early '70s rock,
Yeah.
which I'm generally a huge fan of. Um, I think I preferred the songs that were the most jammy, the ones that had the most kind of like live music bounce or
Hmm.
feel to it. Like the slower songs, the songs I might even say are overwrought, didn't work as well. I think if I had to, like, the only thing that's really, the main thing that held me back on this last listen from being like, this was a fucking instant smash for me, like, you know what I mean, was
Hmm.
the lyrics were pretty hit or miss.
Hmm.
I thought when the lyrics were good, they really added a lot to the songs. There's definitely some singer songwriter DNA in here, and it's a double edged sword to where when they don't work, like I think Via Chicago was my least favorite in particular lyrically.
Really?
Like
That's interesting.
I was like, this is really taking me out of being able to enjoy the other aspects of it. But as a
Hmm.
whole, also I want to say, running theme on this pod, the weather really determines how much I like the records you give me.
Yeah.
Because as it's gotten sunnier and warmer, especially like walking around or just like working with a bunch of sunlight in my room,
Hmm.
much hit a lot different. But yeah,
Yeah.
those are sort of my overall like immediate thoughts.
Yeah. Do you have favorite tracks?
Mm-hmm.
Because I feel like what which ones stood out to you?
So the two that really stood out to me, and this is also going to label me as like a stupid boomer dad, summer or shot the shot in the arm remix was by far my
Hmm.
favorite on this record. I obviously liked the original shot in the arm, but I know, like, I was reading that they made some structural changes to it, and that
Hmm.
stuck out to me less. But I just thought the mix, like the bass, was a lot higher. I thought it was like a lot more dynamic of a mix, and I kind of wish the rest of the record was mixed that way. Summerteeth, um, and then when you wake up feeling old, because it reminded me so much of like an Eagles ballad. It kind of had that like country pre yacht rock straddle going on, and
Yeah.
then I would have liked Candy Floss and How to Fight Loneliness a lot more if I liked the lyrics to those. I think Candy Floss in particular was like, man, this is like, our what is it? I'm the boy with the poetry or whatever, or like like that shit. That shit was grating my ass.
Yeah, I will say Candy Floss, the first time I ever listened to this album, I did not like that song at all. But as I've listened to this more, I've started to kind of view that song as like very tongue in cheek because lyrically, this this album, there's a lot of marriage issues all over this thematically. Um, you have partners, they're up all night contemplating their deteriorating relationship. There's uncertainty. You got metaphorical murder fantasies. It's going to dark places, but the music's always like upbeat for most of the record,
Mm-hmm.
and at its center, it's still a poppy record with a lot of great bops, and they're finding room to experiment with some weird sounds. And
Mm-hmm.
I feel like Candy Floss, it's either it might be like the true last song on the
Yes.
album.
Yes.
Um, so in a way, I feel like it's you kind of went through this whole contemplation of relationships and marriage and where you stand with someone else, and then they hit you with this sort of like Phil Spector sounding bubblegum pop,
Right. I was gonna
like,
say.
oh, everything is fine and dandy, and it lyrically it
Mm,
does feel a little like
hokey.
it, yeah, I think that's the point. It
Mm-hmm.
has grown on me over time, but the first time I listened to this, I was like, "Ooh, I don't like this one."
I was gonna say it reminded me a lot of the Turtles,
Mm,
which is like downstream from that Phil Spector like Wall of Sound
yeah,
approach for sure.
yeah. For me, my favorite tracks: "A Shot in the Arm," "Via Chicago," which that's why I thought it was interesting that you didn't like that one, because I love that track, honestly, because of the lyrics. "She's a Jar," "We're Just Friends." I'm Always in Love, ELT, and Can't Stand It. So a good mix of like the poppier songs, but then also like the slower ballads.
Yeah.
And
If I had to pick a fourth favorite song, it'd be Can't Stand It. And if I had to pick my least favorite, I'd pick She's a Jar and Via Chicago.
that's so funny. So what about those two songs? Was it the lyrics that took them down for you?
I think it was a combination of the lyrics with what I would consider kind of the more stripped down ballady sound. I think allowed me to focus a lot more on them. So like it just kind of added to it. I'm generally not a big ballad guy, especially from rock bands. Like as I've gotten older, even like classic ballads, like I say "Stairway to Heaven" is a ballad. I don't find myself wanting to listen to it very much. I think no, sorry. I was gonna say How to Fight. I was gonna say How to Fight Loneliness because of the lyrics. Like, I think I wrote it was some high school poetry slam shit. Like, let me pull up the lyrics to that. I was just like, oh man, dude. Like, what is it?
He's dragging Jeff Tweedy, calling you out.
Yeah,
I mean, as you're looking that up, I do want to say that this album is dominated by the duo of Jeff Tweedy and Jay Bennett, and both Tweedy and Bennett are credited with writing most of the lyrics on this album, but I feel like obviously I don't know who wrote what, but knowing what I know of most of Tweedy's other songs and his lyrics, I feel like the stronger ones are coming from him. I'm sure there are a few tracks on here where like, lyric, but still pretty young and figuring it out. Maybe I'm just trying to.
No.
I was gonna cover my guy. I'm trying to stan Jeff Tweedy.
Well, like when the lyrics worked, I thought they were like, fucking. I thought the lyrics from Summerteeth were awesome. I thought the lyrics on what was the other one I really liked? I thought Even When You Wake Up Feeling Old, which is also kind of a hokey. Like I said, it gave me Eagles, which is like the definition of hokey. I thought they worked really well. It was just kind of hit or miss. Like and I think that maybe I also. Like, because I'm not a huge singer-songwriter guy generally, so the songs are reminding me more, which is interesting given the next record. But so on How to Fight Loneliness, How to Fight Loneliness, Smile All the Time, Shine your teeth till meaningless, sharpen them with lies. I was like, I feel like I wrote that shit when I was 14, and my crush didn't write me back.
Well,
you know what I mean? But like,
I'd like Jeff Tweedy. You didn't go on to Fort Wilco. Maybe if you did.
in another, if I could have sung. No, I mean, I'm just being a hater. Like, I would say about it growing on me, I think I came with this knee jerk of like, it's a bit too folky for my taste. And the more I listened to it, I was kind of like, I liked it more when they stuck to the folkier stuff. Yeah. Like in Via Chicago, when they do the really weird kind of like reverse drums and the kind of like free floating rhythmic stuff, that worked a lot less for me.
Yeah.
Or there's one with a really Nothing's Ever Gonna Last Forever. So like the Alarm Clock. I don't know how I felt about that, but like when they were just kind of jamming out, I see why you said this is a dad rock record, because it gave like, I think I have one note in here of like, I could picture a room full of, or the Wolf Trap lawn full of dads waving their lighters to some of these.
Okay, as someone who has gone to a Wilco concert, you are not too far off.
and I love that shit, like I'm not a hate on it, but like it has those vibes, and I think when this is me being like, oh, stop trying to try new things, like when they played it straighter, I think I was more excited.
Yeah, so just to kind of go back and explain why I picked this one, originally I thought about giving you Yankee Hotel Foxtrot, which came out in, I think, 2002. And that one is considered their best album, pretty much their opus. But that's one of those albums that's just been talked about so much that it's like, what can we really add to it? Like, we're kind of treading old ground here.
Sure.
And like, I was also concerned that I just love that album so much that I didn't want to have too high of expectations of like, maybe this is like too perfect, because it's just a phenomenal album, and there's a lot of interesting stuff to talk about in terms of like, it just floated around because of how fucked the music industry was. But as I said before, Summerteeth is this breakthrough where they had two other albums that were fine. If they kept on that path, they wouldn't have been where they are today. And I just think this is really this first step out of that alternative country sound. It's still all over this record, but you can tell they're kind of starting to like shed that skin. They're doing more experimentation. Um, it to me, it's like psychedelic country. There's all these like
Mm-hmm.
Beatles and Beach Boys sensibilities,
Yeah,
like
for sure.
that fucking Mellotron, like that's Strawberry Fields Forever all over that. It kind of feels like this a combination of I don't know. The Beach Boys aren't from California; they're from fucking Arizona now. They're making a country album, but it's psychedelic. Like it
Yeah.
has that feel, and they were influenced by a lot of that late '60s, early '70s pop. So, like the comparisons you're making to the styles of the Eagles, really not all that far off.
Right. I was gonna say I thought nothing's ever gonna go my way or whatever. That one sounded so much like the Beatles, like kind of like Rubber Soul era Beatles. It just kind of like blew me away. I was like,
Yeah, even Can't Stand It. Just like
yeah,
that sort of like chord progression at the beginning. Like if there's one thing the Beatles did, it was always taking just the pop music of the time, but just adding like the one little thing to like, oh, instead of a major third, what if it's like a minor and like,
right.
whoa, like so it's definitely taking a lot of that. I mean, at the end of the day, I think this is, for all intents and purposes, a pop record
Mm-hmm.
more than it is like alternative country. In the way that like that Casey Musgraves album from a few years ago, like that's more of a pop album than it is like country, you know. Um, which I think you can say that if Wilco weren't doing what they were doing, I don't think um because their influence has been so widespread, I don't think that sort of alternative country sound would have spread to as many bands and artists. Because like country pop is completely different, and kind of compared to last month when you were saying Yellow Tango, I see them as a critics band. Wilco are definitely
I
in that
can
realm
I can
too.
tell. I can tell. This like
Yeah.
feels like 2000. Like this feels like Pitchfork, like the type of shit that like Pitchfork built an empire on. You know.
Yeah.
And like once
Yeah.
again, that's not derogatory, but like when I think this is coming out like a few years before the sort of 90s indie music becomes like by 2011 it's super mainstream, it's just straight
Mm-hmm.
pop music, but I think it's definitely when a lot of bands were starting to embrace pop sentiment sensibilities a lot more.
Mm-hmm.
And I will say a lot of that sort of shit always I don't think I got into it at the right time, so it just either missed me completely or I just was never very interesting to me. So doing this podcast and giving me records like this is good because it kind of forced me to challenge my like fuck that shit. It's actually not fuck that shit. It's actually the shit's pretty good, but
Yeah, I mean, I think it's interesting to look at when this came out because in the world of indie rock, this is post OK Computer, post Lonesome Crowded West, Pixies, all that sort of stuff, um, post grunge, and it doesn't really it doesn't totally feel like it's from 1999.
no,
Um,
no.
it feels like it could be from really any sort of era, and I think that's really cool. Like obviously, as we've mentioned, it sounds a lot like late '60s, early '70s, but a lot of music today also kind of sounds like that. So it's just I think it's cool that they kind of avoided all of those big influences, especially like coming out of Chicago. I mean, the other big band around that area at this time is the Smashing Pumpkins. Not that like we're gonna turn around and start making a 3-hour triple album rock opera or whatever, like the Smashing Pumpkins are doing now.
Oh god.
God
You
knows who wants to
know,
listen to that, but
it's like it's I will say it's interesting that like it's not interesting, it's actually very obvious because CD sales are just going so fucking hog wild at this time of like like sort of like my main shit is like rap music, especially like in understanding history. And there was such a thing in this late 90s through mid 2000s. It's like, dude, you got to have a double album. And it's like, no, you fucking don't. Like,
Yeah.
and
You
like,
really
and
don't. You really don't.
you really, whew. Yo, Nas's Streets Disciple, like one of the most tedious listens of my entire fucking life. That shit should have been 9 songs. But
Yeah, I mean, ugh. I could go on
like,
a rant about double albums.
we'll save it for. I have a record I'm going to give you that's like the length of a double album, and you can rant about it then.
Oh, no.
It's
Is
okay.
It Swans?
No, I get pussy.
Good one.
No, but like I think I'll probably honestly keep listening to this record. After the first like two or so listens, I was like, this is fine. I'm not going to come back to it, but I feel like because the more I'm listening to it, the more I'm finding stuff, and it kind of challenges my tastes, and like, it challenged my gut reaction. Like I said, I fucking hate the Yola Tango record when I listened to it, but I think that was just setting. I think taste-wise, it's kind of in line. This is kind of like, like I love Southern rock. I've considered giving you a Leonard Skinner album before, but I'm like, that's just too easy.
I mean, it would, like, look, there's a lot of shit you can say about Leonard Skinner, but at the end of the day, a lot of those songs slap. Like, you're telling me that if someone puts on Gimme 3 Steps, you're not going to be singing along to that shit?
All I'm saying is the record I'll give you, the problem is because you know all the songs, but the first Leonard Skinner record has Gimme 3 Steps, Tuesday's Gone, Simple Man, and Freebird on a 9-song record. Like,
yeah, it's like,
you know what I mean? Like, yeah, and the other songs also, you know what I mean? The other songs also slap, but like, anyway, but I think my gut instinct to hearing a banjo come in, and I'm kind of like, I don't know about that, or like hearing some kind of like Beach Boys oohs over some really twangy guitars might, maybe I'm getting soft in my own old age, like maybe my hater instincts are crumbling, much like our climate, but like, I don't know, like I'm really glad you gave this to me, and I'm really glad I was forced to give it a chance, because I think all too often we're busy. There's so much music historically and also coming out all the time. It feels like a lot of times I do just go off my gut instinct in first listen, but this was rewarding in a way, especially being able to dive into the lyrics, including the ones I might not have loved.
Yeah, I mean, that's the spirit of the pod, like sticking with an album, because I think the closest thing I can relate to that was the Disclosure record, because it's not something I would have really listened to on my own, but just going back and, I remember having a conversation with a friend of mine before, and he once said something like, we're too nice to each other on our thoughts on the music, but I'm like, no, like, legitimately, I'm not gonna go into something being like, let me see what I can hate about this. Like, I'm going to be like, yeah, maybe like a few years ago, but like, I'm gonna go into some of this music with like an open mind, and I think, at least I approach it like, okay, like, why did Danny pick this specifically, and like, what is it that makes it click for you? Because, I mean, look, we got different tastes, but I'm gonna say it, we got some fucking good taste.
Oh, for sure. I mean, I was gonna say on that front, I trust you and I trust your taste, so I tend to be like going into this sort of like to your point, there must be a reason. Also, however, if your friend wants to hear some real shit talk, tell him to hit my line when you're not listening. I'll really bare my soul.
Yo, here's my phone. Here's my phone number. Hit me up.
Okay, but speaking of differing tastes, what about Via Chicago makes it one of your favorites on this record? Because this is one of the first times I think my single least favorite song is one of your favorites. I think it's pretty rare we have such a like diametric opinion on something, so I'm curious.
Yeah, so I actually really love the lyrics on here. I like this idea of, like, I view this whole song as just kind of this. Have you ever had those moments where you have like that dark thought that like pops up for a minute and you're like, I'd never fucking do that, but like it was just the fact that you even like had that thought, you know what I mean? Everyone has had that.
Today at a grocery store, a cop walked directly, like, within 3 inches of me. I'm like, I could just grab that gun right now.
Like, fucking... like fucking Manchester by the Sea in here? Or like...
Yeah, but no, for sure.
And I think Jeff. I keep picturing it. I keep picturing that scene of Manchester by the Sea, but it's just you.
It's just fucking me waiting for a juice, and I'm like, Don't mind if I.
I don't even want to shoot the guy. I just want to take his gun and be like,
oh, because he was like, he was short and fat, much like other animals you might think of, and I was like, I could probably just dangle this over his head,
Well, I mean,
but obviously we respect law enforcement. Please don't do an extrajudicial killing on me.
Yeah. That being said, if you dangled it over his head, he wouldn't have been able to see it.
Oh fuck! I'm never getting a job again.
Oh man, I don't know why we didn't say anything. We didn't say anything explicit. I'm just hey that
yeah.
Your mind took you to that conclusion. But yeah, so back on track. I feel this whole song, like Jeff Tweedy wrote a whole song based upon that whole idea of like you have that dream where like you did something fucked up in the dream, and you're just like, oh shit. And just that realization that like you are sort of capable of that. But I love I dreamed about killing you again last night and it felt alright to me as an opening lyric. Like that is one of my favorite Wilco lyrics because it's just like right from the get-go I'm like, oh, this shit's pretty dark, but like I'm interested to know why. And I'm one of those people who I always have like an image going in my head listening to music. Maybe I listen to I watched too many like anime music videos growing up and that fucked me up. Like watching Naruto and Sasuke fight while Listen to Your Heart was playing. That does a number. That does a number on somebody. But a lot of people have like talked about this, like creating these little music videos in your head as you listen to stuff. And this song in particular, I always have the image of like you're alone on the train, either going back into the city or leaving it. It doesn't matter, but I think it's the fact that like there's that lyric at the end where he's saying I'm coming home via Chicago. This sense of you can't ever really escape, and what it is that you're escaping from is different depending on like what you're thinking at the time. The context of this song, it can be those feelings and thoughts that you have of like you're sort of trapped in this bad relationship, and you can't truly escape from it, and whether that's like a romantic relationship or a friendship, or just escaping from negative thoughts in general. I also just love what's happening musically. Like the weird out of tune guitar solo is really cool. It's one of those things where it's like I wish I could have came up with something like that, but I'm not in Wilco. Like I'm not smart enough. And
don't say that.
The percussion stuff is really cool. It's not like, well, I've never heard anything like this before, but I like the way the drums kind of like slow down and then everything's getting a little crazy. And at the end, it has like that high pass filter on it where it sounds like this radio. Just musically, it's really cool. And conversely to you, I do sort of like those Wilco ballads.
Mm-hmm.
Jeff Tweedy's voice has really grown on me. I feel like there's a conversation to be had at some point about when you have a singer of a band that you really like and you go to that band in certain times and that voice kind of becomes a comfort to you, and even if they don't have necessarily a great voice. I mean, Jeff Tweedy's voice is very distinct. Is it like the greatest voice you've ever heard? Like absolutely not, but it's when you hear him, you're like, that's fucking Jeff Tweedy, like that's Wilco, or that's him doing some solo stuff. So it's like that sense of comfort, but I like the lyrics of it. I think it's really cool musically. And it's just kind of one of the staples of them as a band. Like, here's a guy kind of writing about his hometown, going back to his hometown despite any failures and things that you might have had in your life. I just think it's a cool track.
It's interesting because all the things you named are the things I didn't like about it, and like it's like I don't think there's a conversation to be had because it's like that worked for you but didn't work for me, and I think that's as much of a mark of like interesting songwriting choices, like you were mentioning. Like it's not going to hit for everyone when you kind of like break the mold a little bit, and like I said, I found myself being like, oh, like well, why don't you just play the fucking 1564 or whatever shit, you know what I mean?
Yeah,
like a little bit too much on this record for my own personal liking. I'll have to do some self-reflecting. I will say on like, for example, like for me, Summerteeth is the clear highlight of the record, musically, lyrically. Like for the times when I thought that sometimes the lyrics were a bit like first drafty, even though this one has that same sort of like almost teenage angsty bad poetry vibe, maybe it worked for me. Like the One Summer of Suicide, Another Autumn, A Traveler's Guide, like I don't know, like shit like that, or like on the typewriter Ribbon, The Shadows Grow. Like I thought it was really impressive. I love the hook on that one. It was just so like, like you mentioned, it is a very, I would say, breezy record for the most part. It's a classic, like what's the Prince song? I can't or fuck. I'm really making myself
I Would Die for You.
No,
is that what you're thinking of?
No. Oh my god. 1 second. I Can Never Take the Place of Your Man. It's a very happy song, and the lyrics are very dark if you pay attention, and I tend to really like those as a whole. And I think the other reason I lean towards the brighter, sunnier stuff on this record is because when the instrumentation was also a bit moodier, it felt like it was a bit hitting me over the head with it. But yeah, I mean, Summerteeth is going to be in my summer rotation from here on out. That shit was I might listen to it after the pod. Who's to say?
Who's to say? Only time will tell. Well, I mean, overall, I'm glad that this album worked for you. I would highly encourage you to listen to Yankee Hotel Foxtrot. I think if you liked this, you will definitely like that. They do more of that folksy stuff. Like there's a few tracks on there that kind of remind me of when Modest Mouse get a little folky. I mean, that album is considered their best for a reason. It's tremendous, but their whole discography is really good. I mean, some albums aren't as good as others, but every album has at least like 3 really good songs on it, and they're just continuing to do some
nobody's
some really
perfect.
Cool stuff.
Nobody's perfect. I will go out of my way to listen to WTF by Wilco.
So yeah, that's Summerteeth by Wilco. Check it out. Shout out Chicago, I guess.
My hometown, baby.
So, Danny, it's every so often you talk about your job. What is it that you do for work again?
I'm a surgeon! I'm a surgeon! Dr. Hunt, I'm a surgeon! I'm a surgeon! I'm a surgeon!
I'm a surgeon! I'm a surgeon!
For those of you who don't know, there is a network a network drama show called The Good Doctor that is adapted from a K-drama that is about a doctor with autism, and it's basically like, what if it was my understanding is, what if it was House MD, but he had autism instead.
It's just like every clip I see from the show. So I remember I sent the one to you where the good doctor just keeps misgendering this patient.
Well,
and everyone's like, oh, come on now. And like, listen, I know people with autism, and it's not like they actually use like she, her pronouns. It's not like they like can't comprehend that. I know trans people who are autistic.
I was gonna say, I feel like there's a large overlap in those two communities.
Like, it's watch every scene from this show is just like, what the fuck is going on in this shit? Like, I watched one where he goes in, and it's the fact that I have zero understanding of like the context of these scenes, but I don't know. I feel like you could show someone a scene, like an emotional scene out of context from like fucking Breaking Bad, and people would be like, oh, like there's some serious shit going down. I don't know what it is, but like I know it ain't good. But in this scene I saw from The Good Doctor, he tells his dad, he's like, you killed my rabbit and you killed my brother. I don't care if you die. And I'm just here like laughing at this shit.
For real. No,
like, the way it's just, it's so weird.
Well, here. So we bring this up because it's been all over Twitter the past like 15, like 20 hours.
Yeah, to the point that like by the time this episode comes out, we might not even remember we saw any of that shit.
And like there's all like it's just like there's someone was like he has a baby and someone's like the Good Doctor is canonically hit it raw.
There was I saw a whole scene today
about him talking about sex on FaceTime.
Yeah, and he's like, you can't do sex over the phone. She's like, call me when you get home from work. Listen, I don't know if I can live in a world where the Good Doctor's getting it and I ain't.
I mean, I was gonna say canonically, like it's kind of like George Costanza is supposed to be like this ugly man has gotten more pussy than basically any living person who's not like a pro athlete or musician. But the depressing part is I saw someone saying like the season finale, the biggest episode of Succession brought in like 2.7 million viewers. The premiere of The Good Doctor brought in like 12.5 million. So like,
is it the season premiere or like series premiere?
The series premiere.
I mean, I feel like
I'm just saying.
I will say.
I'm just saying we're like, what is this? It's been running for 4 years. You've never heard of it. We like, there's a whole world of like old people just stuck in their chairs all day, just like flipping through the same 3 standard definition channels, even though they pay for HD. And they're just mainlining this shit to the bloodstream.
I will say I remember seeing commercials for The Good Doctor probably while like watching, I don't know, NBA playoffs or something, right? Because that's like the only time you realistically watch ABC. Like you're watching sports.
Like watching sports is a good way to know what's going on in the culture. Like there's a whole show called it's like a Bachelor show, but it's called Farmer Needs a Wife.
Oh my god!
And I looked it up, and it's run for 12 seasons.
You're telling me they couldn't call that shit "Pharma Needs a Hoe"?
Oh god! Well,
the title was right there, y'all.
Or like,
what are you doing?
Or like, there's this other show where they get celebrities to go through Navy SEAL training, and so it's just pictures of like Dwight Howard and like TikTok celebrities getting like waterboarded in like the promo trailers. Essentially.
That's actually pretty good. I'd watch that.
No, if I like, you know, if there's one night I'm just way too drunk by myself, maybe I'll be like, oh fuck it, Navy SEAL the challenge.
I mean, the thing is, it's not really gonna be like A-list celebrities. It's gonna be like, watch Carrot Top get pelted with like airsoft rounds.
I mean, honestly, I would prefer that.
Yeah, like they're not gonna be waterboarding Meryl Streep. Like they're gonna
if they do, tell me their location. I will take. Me and the Lil B Base God Task Force will be forced to intervene on behalf of Meryl Streep.
Dude, I wonder if Lydia Tarr will end up on that show. Who's to say? We never even like finished the whole came full circle on The Good Doctor. I don't know. I stand with Dr. Han. I don't think he did anything wrong.
Yo, it's fucked up he got fired for being like I saw another scene where he gets too emotional and runs out of a surgery. The person's like chest cavity is open, and Dr. Han's the villain for being like, "You're too emotional. We're gonna have to put you on like suspension." And that's when he screams, "I'm a surgeon!"
Yeah, and
like,
I saw the
Dr.
clip where they fired Dr. Han, and the guy's like, I don't know. I'm just gonna keep calling him the good doctor. He's like, the good doctor inspires people, and Dr. Han's like, I didn't fire him because like I didn't think he didn't inspire people. The guy like freaks out, and like
it's also like for those of you who haven't seen the clips, Dr. Han is like one of the sexiest men I've ever seen in my entire life.
He's Daniel Day Kim.
Yeah.
So shout out to anyone who watched Lost. He was Jin from Lost, who was sexy as hell in that show. One of the best shots in that whole show is like the end of the first season. They launched their little raft, and like he's chilling on the back of this raft, and I'm just like, oh my god. Yeah, rewind. He's just looking gorgeous as shit. So yeah, he's got the jawline of a statue, baby.
Like, how can you not be Team Dr. Han? Well,
yeah.
Speaking of gorgeous, we have a gorgeous record that I gave Tyler this month. The record I gave him is 1965's Pastel Blues by the legend, the irreplaceable, the unforgettable Miss Nina Simone.
Well, once I lived the life of a millionaire, spending my money, I didn't care. Taking my friends out for a mighty good time, buying bootleg liquor, champagne and wine. Then I began to fall so low. Couldn't find me no friends, had no place to go. And if I ever get my hands on $1 again, I'm gonna hold on to it till the eagle grin. I said nobody knows.
So something we kind of discussed before we recorded this was we didn't want to just sit here and sort of do a hagiography of Nina Simone. Like, that's been done. It's been done better by what we can do. And something that struck me when I was trying to, because like this is a record I love, and whenever I pick a record like this where I don't know like the history of it as much as the music, there's not very much written about this record in particular. The best write-up is Pitchfork did a 2-paragraph like recap on their best album of the 60s list. And so I think there's a good opportunity for us to talk about, this music. I think this has 2 of her greatest songs and probably 2 of the greatest songs in recorded music on it. We'll obviously talk about them in depth. The last thing I'll say before I toss to Tyler is these are pretty much all standards. The opening track, Be My Husband, is attributed to her real life husband manager. But it's a very direct adaptation of like a chain gang prison spiritual. And then one of the tracks is credited to someone in her band, but that could also be an adaptation. I'm not entirely sure. So I think that's also an interesting angle we can talk about more. But Tyler, what did you think?
Yeah, needless to say, it's fantastic. You can't sit and go, nah, that Nina Simone album wasn't that good, Like, it just can't be done. I will say that this was the first time I actually sat down and listened to a full Nina Simone album. Like, obviously there were tracks of hers I had heard before, but I never like, hey, I'm gonna sit down, I'm gonna listen to a whole album by her. I do kind of want to set the scene for the first time I listened to this album. So this was during my trip to London. We're going to Liverpool for the day. So I'm sitting alone on this commuter train, and it's a gray, drizzly morning, as it usually is. And whenever I'm on public transportation, that's when I pop in some music. Wi-Fi usually sucks. You can't watch anything. It's about like a 3-hour train ride. So it's like, well, I'll get started on listening to Pastel Blues. And so I'm sitting there on this train, not a lot of people on it yet, still pretty early in the morning. And I'm just greeted with that sparse, bluesy Be My Husband, and I'm just looking out the window, and we're leaving this gloomy, drizzly city and starting to enter in the countryside. And it was just listening to this album during that trip was really something. It was just a really cool experience. I think also in the sense of like that was the first time I had traveled outside of my own country, and this is a very American album for
Mm-hmm.
like, for better or for worse. It captures the beauty of America and then everything that's like terrible about it. And it was like this weird link back to where I'm from in a place that I've never been to before, and that feels familiar, but it's still different. Like
Mm-hmm.
a lot of times when I was there, I would think about how, oh, here's McDonald's that people go to just like me, or like people are driving their cars just like I do, but it's the other side of the road, or just those little cultural things.
They
So
got
listening
mushy
to
peas
this,
on the Big Mac or whatever.
yeah, they got cold, unseasoned vegetables. I'm putting a little
They got jellied
garlic
eel.
yeah,
They
come
got jellied
on.
eels at the Burger King. You know.
Yeah, like what's going on here? So it was a really cool experience to listen to while I was on that trip, and then revisiting again these past few days. Uh, but just to cover my favorite tracks, I mean it's hard to
Mm-hmm.
because this is such a like you start from the beginning and you listen to it all the way through. I guess before I really talk about the favorite tracks, I feel like it's better to talk about how to me this album really felt like a performance in a cocktail lounge or
Mm-hmm.
something. Like it's not a live album, but it feels that way. Like this feels like a set list. It's
Mm-hmm.
it's smoky, it's dark, but like you can see this light on the stage, and there's Nina Simone, the spotlight's right on her. She's controlling where all of this music is going, and the band is subdued because like she is the focus. She just has so much power here without ever like becoming like overwhelming like outright. There's like a spiritual sense of overwhelming, but like the band doesn't need to be loud in front and center because like you have Nina fucking Simone. Like that's all you need. So favorite tracks: Be My Husband, Nobody Knows You When You're Down and Out,
Mm-hmm.
End of the Line, Ain't No Use, Strange Fruit, and Sinnerman. I mean, like,
That's like
how
half
could
the record. Yeah.
yeah, like the ones
Yeah.
that like really the ending of End of the Line is just like phenomenally beautiful. Like it's like I remember listening to that song for the first time. I was like, okay, I'm with this, but like I just kept repeating that like last minute. I'm like, holy shit. Like how like this is how did you capture this on music? Like it's insane. It's a
Yeah.
tremendous record.
And two things I just want to point out where Nina Simone plays the piano on all these tracks, and is also doing all the arrangements. Like we obviously, like I said, we don't like we don't need to praise Nina Simone. Well, we do, but I just want to point out again, like she's doing the arrangements on these, and the arrangements on all these are fucking incredible, right? The
Yeah.
piano's insane. She put out I Put a Spell on You 4 months, a different record 4 months before this, and that has Feeling Good on it. Obviously has I Put a Spell on You. It's a very orchestral big record, and I think with the exception of Strange Fruit and to some extent Sinnerman, I think those are the songs that have stuck in the culture a lot more. But I prefer her in this really stripped down where it's like
Yeah.
you mentioned that she's not like what the word I would use is she overwhelms you when she wants to. She's just in total
Yeah.
control.
I feel like extravagant is a good word to use as I
Yeah.
think more about it.
Yeah, she's in total control. The songs go exactly where she wants them to. Her voice goes exactly where she wants them to. And like I said, this is you do your point of being an American record. Like it's hard to think of an art form more American than the blues. And this is obviously a collection of blues standards and spirituals. And what I really like about this is you capture the range of what the blues can do and represent. Like, Be My Husband is very pleading. Sinnerman is frantic and like overwhelmingly anxious. Fucking Chilly Winds Don't Blow and Trouble in Mind are kind of almost hopeful in a way.
Yeah.
Like End of the Line, it's despairing, it's just an incredible. It's just I think that people can think of the blues who aren't super familiar with it as kind of just like it's like BB King and that's it. Not that he didn't do these things, right? But like
Right.
it's such a deep, it can be there's so many facets to sadness, right? And I think that this record really explores all the various ways it can manifest.
Yeah, there's something I wrote. Overall, what makes this album timeless is because of how deeply it's connected with the complexity of American culture. It it feels like the amalgamation of its time, like this brief overview of just the feeling of the time rather than like the politics of it that you can get from something like, I don't know, What's Going On
Right.
by Marvin Gaye, where it's
Right.
like this is going to delve a little bit more politically. I mean, most of these songs, except for like Strange Fruit and to an extent Sinnerman, most of
Right.
these aren't like explicitly political, but they really capture just the anger, the dissatisfaction, and honestly, just the tiredness of it
Yes.
all. Like, it's not to say like I can understand the experience and the feelings that she had, but it made me think a lot of like 2020 when it's like just so angry that you're just so tired of being
Mhm.
angry all the time. And like you don't need to like be belting it out in the microphone. Like it's coming across in other ways from like the piano playing, just the power of her
Yes.
voice. I think one of Nina Simone's greatest talents was the way that she could make something sound so powerful in such like a soft timbre in a way
Mm.
that I don't think any other singer can do that. Um,
Yeah, I was gonna
it's
say
it's
like
just kind of insane.
I was gonna say tell me more and then some for me. Like at the very end, she does kind of three like ooh ooh oohs in like the last
Yeah.
30 seconds, and I'm like, she wrung more emotion out of those three ooh oohs than most people do in their entire lifetime.
Yeah.
And like end of the line, it sounds like her voice is crying.
Hmm.
Strange Fruit. Like for me, this is the definitive version of Strange Fruit,
I
and
agree.
and like I don't know how much time you have two white dudes talking about Strange Fruit, right? But like
Right, right.
it doesn't matter where I was when I listened to it. It just feels like your world starts to cave in a little bit. Like all the hairs
Hmm.
on your neck stand up.
Yeah.
Um,
It's
and
very
to your
chilling.
and I just want to add a little bit of like the history of she leaves. She's kind of a mainstay in the like Greenwich, New York folk scene up until '63, and then due to the Birmingham church bombing, she gets really radicalized and kind of leaves her label. And her husband, who is famously abusive, famously her manager, really didn't want her to be too political. And I
Hmm.
think this record comes out in that period of that kind of push and pull with how much she's allowed to be political, right?
Yeah.
She records this in the period where she's doing the Selma Montgomery March, right? Like where she is a super outspoken civil rights figure. And while they, like you said, these songs aren't necessarily political in like the same way, like, I don't know, like a fucking like Crosby, Stills, Nash and Young or like
Yeah.
Blowing in the Wind is. It like, you know what I mean? Like you said, it
Yeah,
captures
yeah, yeah.
that like perfectly. And, you know, there's shit popping off in my city right now with like, these things don't change, right?
Right.
Like
Right.
like the NYPD were brutalizing a bunch of people protesting the murder of a homeless black man like yesterday.
Hmm.
And so it's timeless, maybe sadly, because it still feels so viscerally true to life.
Yeah, it sucks in that way of like, wow, this is still relatable. Like the images that Nina Simone saw, I saw very similar things in terms of like these protests in the street, police brutality, and
Lynchings.
yeah, like it's just sort of surreal to say. I mean, as you said, like, is there anything philosophically or like important that we as like two white men talking about music from a black woman can add? Um, it's just one of those things like go fucking listen to it for yourself, you know? Like the music speaks for itself. We don't need to explain this to you. She does a great job. It 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 gets everything across perfectly. Um, and that was something I noted down too. Like it's just it does such a fantastic job of conveying her thoughts and feelings. It's so engraved in the music. It's just listening to this, you're listening to someone who is a master of their craft in the sense of like you're watching an athlete at the peak of their game. You know, just like oh my god, I'm in total awe. Um, I actually did watch a documentary about Nina Simone yesterday. Actually, it was called "What Happened, Miss Simone," and it was on Netflix. And this was something that it's been on my watch list for. I don't know, it came out like 2015, 2014, so almost 10 years now. You know, like I'll get around to watching that one day. And because we were gonna talk about this, I was like, you know what, I'm gonna finally watch that fucking documentary because maybe I'll learn something. And you know, it doesn't necessarily say anything that is like, whoa, I had no idea about that. But it does really dig into, for a period, it digs into her relationship with her husband, who, as you mentioned, was very abusive towards her. And I think subconsciously it shows up on this record. Um, it's really weird to listen to a song, Be My Husband, that, like you said, was potentially adapted from like this Chain Gang song. Like,
By
you know,
him.
yeah, like do I need to say more? Like I'm trapped in this horrible relationship. I'm
I'll
singing
do
this song.
anything, right?
Yeah. Yeah. It's just it's just
It's haunting. It's haunting.
yeah,
And like
that's the
it's
best the
so
best way to put it.
it's just, it's just people stomping and clapping and Nina Simone
Mhm.
just fucking ripping your heart out, right? It's just
Yeah, it's there's a certain pain on a lot of these tracks that feels genuine. You know, we have a lot of music today and since then where people write like these soul crushing songs. I don't mean this as like a straight comparison of the two, but I think a lot of how like particularly the indie white girls of today think like Phoebe Bridgers is writing the most like soul annihilating music
oh
ever
no.
made. You know what I mean?
You can't come back to my neighborhood. You can't come back to Bushwick. The bisexuals are gonna get you, Tyler.
Well, I got pansexual power, so
Oh,
I trust my odds. Yeah, I got a few trans people that can back me up. So like the good doctor, you know. But you know, you have like these Phoebe Bridgers songs where people are like, "Oh my god, this is so fucking sad," and it's like,
I've never listened to Phoebe Bridgers, but I saw people standing the lyrics. I hate you for what you did, and I miss you like a little kid. And I was like, this is
Yeah.
some get the fuck out of here.
look, there
I'm
was a
sorry.
period where I enjoyed Phoebe Bridgers. You know, like Punisher, legitimately very good album, but it's like it sucks watching someone like fall into this thing. Um, I don't want talking about Nina Simone to be turning into like let's
Yeah,
talk about like
fuck that.
this white woman artist. But I bring this up because it's like there's a difference between I wrote a song that's sad, but like my heart's not necessarily there, versus like this is conveying what I am feeling. Not in that I wrote these lyrics myself, but like there's a certain art to adapting someone else's music and covering someone else's song and making it your own. Like that's why everyone fucking loves Johnny Catt's cover of Hurt, because it's like,
Right.
wow, you made it your own. And like that's what she's doing on most of these tracks. Like taking someone it's just something to take a song made by fucking Billie Holiday and then it's like
Yeah,
okay,
right. It's
like this is mine. Like, well, that was fucking Billie Holiday. It's like,
Right.
well, I'm Nina Simone. You know, like,
I was going to say "Tell Me More" and "Then Some" is also a Billie Holiday song, and I think she
Yeah.
also just stole that. You know what I mean? It's like it's
Yeah.
kind of like it's kind of like when Aretha Franklin covered "Respect," and it's like, yeah, that's your song now. You know?
yeah, and in a way, it's that spiritual sense of like still having the same struggles that Billie Holiday had, and they're still here, and that like fucking sucks. But you gotta be talking about it, and you gotta be putting your heart and soul out there. And it's refreshing to listen to this album in an age where everything just feels so fucking soulless. Like every piece of media is just, where is the
The Good
heart?
Doctor.
We were gonna do a bit about AI generated Simpsons episodes or something. And at the time of this recording, the Writers Guild of America is on strike because, for a multitude of reasons, but one of them was that studios wanted to start using AI to write shit.
Oh,
And
fucking hell.
as someone who has always been more invested in the arts as opposed to like maths and science, it's just AI can't replicate the shit that humans do in terms of art. Like, art is conveying the feelings and sensibilities of being human, and a computer can't replicate the experiences and our emotions in the same way. And it's just, everywhere you look, it's like fucking Guardians of the Galaxy and like The Flash are gonna be the top grossing movies by the end of June, you know? Like, The Good Doctor is getting more views than Succession. And it's just like, what are people fucking doing? Like, where is it that hard? I absolutely cannot fucking stand when people say, oh, it's just something to, turn on and turn your brain off. Like, oh, God fucking forbid I have to feel something or think about something. Like, not saying that, every piece of music has to make you think, wow, that really makes you think about our place in all of this. Like, at least like Wilco songs aren't as deep as these Nina Simone songs, but at least like goddamn, I'm feeling and thinking about something on these songs. Like, there's heart put into those, and it's not fucking hard to do if you're like an artist, and not everyone's a fucking artist, like not everyone is a Nina Simone, and we're not asking you to be, but like, for the love of fucking
I am
God,
personally. Like, get with the program.
Yeah, like, for the love of God, just put some of yourself and some effort and heart into what you're making, because if you're not, then what's the point of making it? Like, Nina Simone could have just sat and be like, I'll continue to suffer. I mean, in that documentary, they are showing these snippets from this diary of hers, which I'm not sure how I felt about that, but there was this line that was like, I'm willing to starve myself and go through pain for a cause that means a lot to me. And of course she's talking about the civil rights movement, but it's that sense of, it just kind of shows what her mindset was when it came to creating and being and living and experiencing. Like, there's that classic saying of like, suffering is art, which like you make an argument for, but like, it's your experiences that make art. And on this record, you have her conveying all of those experiences of this time in a way that very much makes you emphasize with everything that she's experiencing, even if you yourself can't go, yeah, I know exactly how that feels. But it's like, there are just moments as you listen to this where you think like, God damn, I fucking feel this, especially Strange Fruit, Sinnerman, which is just this great.
I was gonna say we should
ending.
talk about Sinnerman for a little bit, just because, like, I think this is for me, this is in the running for like best songs ever recorded, sort of thing.
Yeah.
Like,
it's way up there.
It's like, man, I was like walking, as I usually do, I try and listen to the albums like kind of like the last couple hours before recording, and so I listened to that, maybe like at this point like an hour and a half ago, and I was like, I refuse to listen to anything else until we start recording. Like,
yeah, you need a little bit of a break.
Yeah, man, it's just like you just want to sprint. You listen to it and you just want to go out of your house, and you feel that like it feels like the apocalypse is here. It feels like you're running around trying to do anything and there's nothing there. The piano is just tremendous. I love the way it strips down bit by bit to the middle to where there's a full-blown, like, it's someone stomping, clapping, and something that you can only call beatboxing for, like, a 30, 45-second stretch. And then it just comes all back and smacks you again to, like, You know, I mean, it is a spiritual, right? And
Mhm.
I'm not a really spiritual person. Killer Mike, who I don't love him as much as I did 10 years ago, but he is a good song where he's like, I've never felt a religious experience in church. I've only felt it listening to music. And like,
Yeah.
that is that song incarnate. Like, it is a fucking
Yeah.
transcendent listen.
Yeah, and it's just one of those songs where as you listen, you just kind of think about everything that's going on in the time, and how does one react to that, especially as, you know, Nina Simone being this very controversial civil rights
Mm-hmm.
figure. I mean, like, she was one of the figures that was like, nah, if we got to use violence, like, we fucking need to. There's did you watch it's called Summer of Love, the documentary that Questlove
No,
did
I
about
haven't. But I haven't. That's like on my list.
it's really good. Because this documentary I watched actually used a clip of Nina Simone's performance at that festival,
Mm-hmm.
where she asks the crowd, "Are you ready to kill if necessary?" And like immediately everyone's like, "Yeah!" Like no one's like, "Oh," you know. And it's this idea that people are so uh hesitant to any sort of like violent reaction when like it calls for it. Like there are times where it's like, look, you got to protect yourself, um in like a self-defense sort of way, and she was just very like outspoken for that. So listen to a song like Sinnerman with all of that in mind. It's just it's an immense experience is the best way to put it. It's powerful, it's a real force. I think the way it does get stripped down very intentionally, it's supposed to be evoking that old spiritual sense of just ancestors in the fields, like building the country, you know, and knowing everything of how Nina Simone viewed culture and being black in America. She is smart enough to know what she's doing. Like this is
Yeah.
a master of art and music and conveying her message across, and it's phenomenal.
Yeah. And I mean, like, there's so few songs I ever heard that convey that sense of just like frantic, like, I need to get out of this situation by any means possible, you know, which is certainly like the spirit of the times. And you know, people have often drawn comparisons to our current era to the 60s, and I don't think unfounded. And certainly, like, I watched First Reformed last night, which is a very different type of desperation and
Yeah.
franticness, but
It got the fabled Danny 5 stars on Letterboxd, I saw.
oh god, yeah, it did. But like, you know what I mean? Like that same sort of like, I need like something has to happen, and you're only met
Yeah.
with like no, or like you know, like it's too late. I think that sentiment only feels like it's growing. You know, I think I don't want to go too much into like 2020 Black Lives Matter, George Floyd, Breonna Taylor, etc. stuff,
Yeah.
just because I could do a whole other thing about that, but like
Yeah. That's also
I look back on the time, and that was probably the most hope I've had for not just our, you know, my country in my lifetime. And it's kind of like what happened. Like the NFL put end racism in the back of the end zones. Nancy Pelosi kneeled for 11 minutes in a kente cloth. And then the Democrats turned around and blamed everything on the movement. Like everything that's gone wrong since then for them. And you listen to a song like Sinnerman, you listen to a song like Strange Fruit, you even listen to a song like Be My Husband or something, and it's just like, it's that exhaustion again. But when you get to Sinnerman, it's so frantic, and like I said, you just want to sprint around. While it might be the most hopeless song on the record, it somehow makes you just like, I got it. You have to keep trying. Like you have to keep looking for the rock or the river or someone that's going to like help you, or you know what I mean? Like it's just very, very visceral. I don't know what else. I don't really know what else to say.
Yeah, I mean, what you're saying, I don't know if I said this on our last episode, but if I did, I'm going to repeat myself. But I recently read this book by the Australian musician Nick Cave, and who has experienced a great deal of loss in his life, the loss of a tragic loss of a son who fell off a cliff and died in like 2014. And then recently another son of his passed away. And the quote is hope is optimism with a broken heart.
Mm.
And that really stood out to me reading that book, because it was a heavy read, because I mean, anyone who has experienced all that sort of loss, of course it would be, but it's like, how do you continue on in the face of such like overwhelming loss and despair? And that's the hardest thing. Like, the only thing that you can really cling to sometimes is hope. And as I like to do, I always like to tie it back into other episodes, and we had a similar conversation when this episode number 2, when we talked about Godspeed You Black Emperor, and how a lot of this music dealt with the idea of sort of facing down the barrel of the gun, but still clinging to something. Maybe it's just human nature, like you don't want to fully give up, because like if you don't have hope, like what do you have? And even maybe just the act of continuing to believe and search for hope is all that necessarily matters. But he had someone like Nina Simone who, you know, never truly gave up. I mean, you could argue that maybe once she left the States and went to France and said, fuck this, maybe in a way she was. But also, like, when Martin Luther King gets assassinated, like, can you really blame her? Like,
Yeah.
well,
I mean,
like,
and you mean after her friend Malcolm X gets assassinated?
yeah,
You
yeah.
know, like
Like,
yeah,
what can you
mean,
fucking do? So it just it does this phenomenal job of just conveying all of that in a pretty relatively short runtime.
yeah,
Like, this
it's
album
tight.
isn't all that long.
Like
Like,
35 minutes.
Yeah, it doesn't waste a single second. And I'm sure most of her other albums probably have a similar feeling surrounding them. But I would be surprised if anything seems to hit just the emotional, unless it's like a live album, but something hitting these emotional and passionate highs. I think you're gonna be
Yeah.
It's gonna be hard to find something that matches that.
I almost gave you her live album In Concert from '63, which has her famous rendition of Mississippi Goddamn as the closer. Obviously, you know, her entire '60s run is fucking incredible, but I would listen to that for sure.
Yeah, like trying to pick out one thing is like,
Right. It's
you
tough.
know, from an artist like Nina Simone, it's like
I
throw
picked
a
this-
dart
yeah.
at the dartboard and like it's gonna hit.
I will say I picked this one because I did like that it was pretty stripped back, and I thought it was really really focus on her.
Yeah,
you
I
know?
liked that a lot. I think it certainly works in her favor here. The fact that it is just her,
Yeah.
for the most part. And when the band comes in, they come in well, but she is at the forefront here. Really has that spotlight.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, American classic, a staple, definitely an essential listen.
Oh, Sinnerman, where you gonna run to? Sinnerman, where you gonna run to? Where you gonna run to? All on that day, will I run to the rock? Please hide me and run to the rock. Please hide me and run to the rock. Please hide me, Lord, all on that day. But the rock cried out, I can't hide you, the rock cried out. I can't hide you, the rock cried out. I ain't gonna hide you down. All on that day, I said, rock, what's the matter with you, rock? Don't you see I need you, rock? Lord, 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 all on that day. So I ran to the river, it was bleeding, run to the sea. It was bleeding, run to the sea. It was bleeding all on that day. So I ran to the river, it was boiling, I ran to the sea. It was boiling, I ran to the sea. It was boiling all on that
Danny, earlier I said some stuff about Guardians of the Galaxy 3 that maybe I need to take back because turns out Chris Pratt is friends with the big man upstairs. And
Joe Biden?
Yeah. Well, I don't know. He might not be friends with him, given it's Chris Pratt. But I know that we did play I Am Jesus Christ, and I thought that would get us, that'll only get you so far. But, Guardians of the Galaxy is in theaters now, so of course, Chris Pratt is not really back on everyone's minds, but, he's floating around. And recently, he said that Jesus' struggle helps him deal with haters. Now, one of my favorite things about this article is that if you're writing an article about Chris Pratt, who has a new movie out, you think you would say the Marvel movie star, like the Guardians of the Galaxy star, but they say the Jurassic World star, who has been out, like the movie that everyone fucking hated. The Jurassic World star, who has been outspoken about his faith, agreed that he's been criticized for it. I sure do, but that's nothing new. That's nothing new. The actor told Page Six exclusively Monday at a Cinema Society screening of his upcoming Marvel movie. He reiterated his point by quoting biblical scripture. If I was of this world, they would love me just like that, but as it is, I've chosen out of this world. That's John 15, verse 18 through 20.
I just want to say, as a Catholic, that's not how we would we would never use the phrase "out of this world" in the fucking Bible. The fucking evangelicals got to get with the program. I'm sorry.
You don't think Jesus and God is like way dope and out of this world, bro?
No, actually not. Because because it's Jesus is out of this world. It's deny his humanness as well as his godliness. That caused quite a few massive,
here's where
violent purges in our recent past. So I don't know about all that.
Here's the icing on the cake. This is where it really all comes together. Here's a quote from Chris Pratt. That's the way it is. Nothing new. 2,000 years ago, they hated him too. He added, referencing Jesus Christ. Like, they had to add in, oh yeah, that's who he's referencing. And the best part, the second best part, is that on this article, you think that the photo you would use for Chris Pratt, it would probably be him at like
a movie
him premiere.
It would be him doing the Ricky Gervais as Jesus Christ Rolling Stone cover.
Yeah, you think it'd be something like that, but no, it's him wearing a Seattle Seahawks hat that has like the American flag patch on the side, holding a baby lamb, trying to look all innocent and cute.
God,
and the caption,
I hate culture.
And I was telling my friends this the other night, and they said he's holding a lamb because in a way he is the shepherd. So he he met his current wife at church.
Oh God. I mean, I'm sure that's people met their wives for centuries, so maybe he's just, getting back to his roots.
It's just I mean, what can you say? 2,000 years ago, they hated Marvel movies too, and we still do.
The Bible, Jesus was the original superhero. The 12 apostles were the original cinematic universe.
Chris Pratt was recently in the Super Mario Brothers movie where he played a super Italian man, and Jesus was the original super Italian.
Extremely racist for Chris Pratt to do Italian face.
Really was. Here's another great quote.
Face in this trying time.
I feel like saying pasta face might in and of itself be. It's okay. I have some Italian blood. It's fine.
Listen, you can't be racist against Italians. I'm resting my hat on that claim.
Here's a really great quote. Well, when it comes to rejection, I was trained in the crucible of door-to-door sales from 25 years ago, so you can't turn me away. There's no stopping us. So, regardless of how many locks you got on your door, how many 2x4s you nail up, Chris Pratt is going to be bursting in.
He is inevitable.
Maybe if you're lucky, he'll be yelling, "I'm a surgeon! I'm a surgeon!"
God damn it.
Oh Lord.
Hell.
I mean, where do we go from here, Danny?
Well, I can talk about the album I was going to give you next month.
That sounds like a good place to go. I'm willing to take that trip.
Fucking Christ. I'm like lightheaded now from laughing so hard. So we had talked about separately really trying to turn up the summer vibes for the summer with our record selection. And, you know, I was going to give you a record that you will get this year because it turns 5 this year. But I decided we're going summery. We're going for a month that just really evokes the months of May and June to me. Which is Made in Lagos by WizKid. We're going international, folks. We're going to Nigeria. I remember this album came out in October 2020, but obviously that was a weird time. I associate so much with that first time back after everyone got the vaccine, that summer 2021. You go to the park and literally there'd be 5 or 6 different barbecues, graduation parties, all playing this record at the same time.
Hell yeah.
I went to London last May, and there was a group of teenagers like singing it while I was walking through the streets on their way to like a night out or whatever. It's a slapper, and I'm very excited. It's perfect for where we're headed weather-wise. So.
I'm excited, especially after some heavy listens on this month's episode. It'll be nice to get those vibes. You know, when I was looking at the albums, I keep a list, and I'm starting to sign months because you talked about it earlier. You really got to keep in mind like the feeling of just the weather and everything that does play a big part. Like if it's bright, happy summer months, like don't give like a gloomy record. The vibe is going to be maybe a little off.
Sure.
So in similar spirit, I wanted to give you an album that I enjoyed a lot. It's more recent, kind of like the one you just gave me. It's from 2021, June 4th, 2021. So you're talking about that summer of 2021. Everyone's feeling good. This is from that moment. It's Jubilee by Japanese Breakfast. Been wanting to give this one to you for a while. I love Japanese Breakfast. I think just the music she's been making is absolutely tremendous, very personal, and as everyone has heard from my rant today about heart and soul in music, she's one of the artists out there that is best representing that. So, and you've listened to one of her albums before. I feel like having that in your mind is very important to going into this one. So yeah, can't wait to discuss some more upbeat, more feel good tracks for the most part. So yeah, it'll be a good one.
I guess this means I have to read Crying in H Mart now because everyone else in my life has read that book and loved it, and I guess this is an
It is a really good book.
Yeah, but reading's for dorks, you know.
Well, there's an audiobook version. And they're making a movie.
The audiobook is a podcast for plebeians, is all I'll say.
Ooh. You know what? I agree with that. Y'all can't sit down for 5 minutes and read a book. You can't do it. It's too hard.
Not my ADHD have an ass. Certainly not.
Well, you know, you can always read some hentai or something while you're on the can.
Oh,
that's why you keep going to the bathroom so much. It makes sense.
Oh my god. My mom listens to this, but I gotta say it. I had a friend text me this week, and they're like, because they know we're really close friends, so I've showed them some stuff like Jar Jar Binks with a 3-foot cock before and whatnot. And I've shown them the Sandy Cheeks cock before, and they were like, "Is there any like coronavirus hentai where it's like, you know, it's not like it's like the virus anthropomorphizes fucking?" And I was like, "I'm sure there is. I gotta find out." And the one I found was fucking horrendous. I don't even want to describe it on record, but let's just say.
When we stop.
I was gonna say let's just say, Yeah, I'm not unfamiliar with the world of hentai, so.
I have seen a it's like the Pfizer vaccine, and it's like pregnant.
I posted that.
Yeah,
That's
I
why-
have
that's
seen.
why-
Maybe that's how you discovered it. I have seen it.
I posted that this week, so I hope I was the one who showed you that.
No, I've seen it before that. I think I saw it, and it was one of those things where like, I'm just gonna keep scrolling. Danny's having one of his moods.
On that fucking note.
I mean, yeah. How else can you end it? From there, I mean, that's. I
If
don't
there's
get
any
vaccinated.
Rule 34 artists who want to make a We Demand a Podcast hentai, please hit my line.
Yeah, we're ready. I'll get refs. You know.
Oh, fucking hell. Alright, another
What?
episode. Another episode in the fucking books. I'm cutting it. I'm cutting it before we go any deeper.
I wasn't
cutting
kidding
it.
when I said I wasn't kidding when I said it was gonna be a phallic episode.